In episode 4, Dieter has arrived home with Hanna and is planning on keeping her there for a couple days, but Dieter's wife is none too pleased. Because she's seen the TV and she can figure out who Hanna's dad is, and Dieter trying to calm her down is not helping. And another person who's seen that report is Jacobs, who returns to his hotel room to see the report, and he's pissed off because this was all supposed to be off the books. But he gets a call from Marissa telling him to meet her at a cafe she has Eric Heller. When Jacobs shows up at that cafe, though, she says, okay, now get in your car. And when Jacobs does that, he sees that his driver has been murdered, and Eric now has him at gunpoint, wanting some answers about who Marissa is. And Marissa was forced to call Jacobs at gunpoint from Rudy. And because of the information that Jacobs provided, when Eric gets back to where they're holding Marissa, he pretty much knows everything about her. The fact that she's now a CIA director, the fact that she has a posh life in France, the fact that she has a boyfriend who has a son, and he's using it to manipulate her. And because of the family angle now, Marissa's willing to do just about anything because she knows how dangerous Eric can be. And Eric's big concern is that international warrant. He also wants a plane to get him and Hanna out of the country. And Eric tells her, now we're going to work together. And just so you know that I'm not messing around, he takes out Jacobs and shoots him in the head. That night, Dieter goes to head out, but his wife is very concerned for his well-being. And Dieter reassures her that his army days are in the past. And now he's a simple cauliflower exporter to England. But Hanna doesn't either believe it or she doesn't want to be left behind, and she sneaks out, causing a distraction that allows her to sneak into Dieter's car. And the first stop is to that cauliflower loading dock, but what she sees isn't cauliflower. It's Dieter trafficking people from Berlin to England. He then heads to the safe house where he requests to speak to Eric, although Hanna and Rudy say that can't be possible because if you see Eric, now you're involved. But they do hand Dieter something and say, if things go south, send this to the local Berlin newspapers. And Hanna is watching all of this go down, mind you. Shortly thereafter, Hanna overhears Eric talking to Marissa, and Marissa is asking Eric, like, how much did you tell Hanna? And Eric says, enough. She then asks, does Hanna know the truth? And he says no. That night, Hanna ends up making it back to Dieter's place and sneaking back into his house. And Dieter is none the wiser. The next day, the group once again holds Marissa at gunpoint, but this time they force her to call Carl Meisner. And she sets up a meeting with her and Carl at a local cafe where she says, I have Eric Heller, but she hasn't been able to bring him in because he's in possession of highly classified details. And she doesn't want to bring him in and then involve the German government. So she's asking Carl to lift the warrant and get them a plane with one single pilot because she doesn't want anybody knowing that she's sneaking Eric out of the country. And the reason she's not telling Carl the real story is because she's surrounded by Eric's guys. And Carl's a little weirded out by this because he hasn't seen or heard from Marissa in a few days. And even though this is really weird, Meisner agrees to do it. But when he gets back to the office, his key card doesn't work. And he's buzzed in, but his whole staff has been let go. And there's now some guy named Jerome sitting there calling the shots. And Jerome is another deputy director that was brought in. And immediately Jerome starts interrogating Meisner if he knows what a company called Utrex is. And Utrex was the company that both Eric and Marissa were working for, the company that bought Hanna from Joanna. But Carl is saying he knows nothing about it. He's simply following orders from Marissa. Jerome then lets Carl in on his theory, that Marissa doesn't actually have Heller, but that Heller actually has Marissa, and they're being played. And of course, Eric does have her, and at that same time, he's asking Marissa what happened to Joanna's body, did they have a funeral, and she says yes. He then asks, did you tell them that I'm the one who killed her? And she says, yeah, you broke protocol. I had to. And he's shaking his head saying she changed her mind. She was a mother of a child and she simply changed her mind. But she signed the child over. So Marissa doesn't really feel guilty about it. And the way Marissa sees it, Eric let his heart get in the way of his responsibility, which is totally reckless. And she's not wrong. Because Joanna ended up coming to Eric, pleading to get her baby back, having regrets about signing the baby over to Utrex. And obviously the plea worked because Eric did end up getting Hanna back. And the way Marissa sees it, both Marissa and Eric were the ones that killed Joanna. He also asked what happened to the Utrex facility, and she said, we shut it down. Because after Eric broke in, they didn't have a choice. Utrex was a risky operation, but it was authorized at the highest level. And the orders were clear that after Eric broke in, nothing was to remain, including the children, who were lethally injected and then cremated. And the reason she's coming after Eric and Hanna so hard is because she had promised a lot of people in high positions that the matter had already been taken care of. And she can't let the news of them surviving get out. Later that day, Eric tells her that she will make the phone call to Meisner to confirm the plane, and then once they're on the plane and in the air, Rudy will let her go. As Eric's leaving, she says, say you get where you're going. Hanna's gonna find out. Children always find out. And Eric looks at her and says, I love Hanna, and I loved Joanna. Who have you ever loved? And right before he does leave, he whispers in Rudy's ear that as soon as she makes the phone call, kill her. Eric then meets up with Dieter, and the group heads off to the airstrip. And she does as she's told. She calls up Carl Meisner to confirm the plane. But Meisner is surrounded by Jerome's people that he brought in. And as soon as she's done making that phone call, Rudy's about to kill her, and she's trying to talk him out of it, and it buys her enough time where somebody shoots Rudy. And that person is Jerome, because they were able to see Hanna on a CCTV camera and thus track down the safe house. But Marissa's never seen this guy in her life and asks, "Who the hell are you?" And he says, "I'm Jerome. Your friends from Utrecht sent me." But at this point, Hanna and Eric have been dropped off at the airstrip. And as they're walking to the plane, Hanna stops and says, "Are you my father?" And she's asking this because she found what they handed to Dieter. And it was the agreement that Joanna signed with Utrecht to hand Hanna over. And under father, it said unknown. And Eric would really rather have this conversation on the plane. But Hannah's not willing to get on the plane with him until they have this conversation. And he's assuring her that, yes, I am your father. But then she asks, "Did you kill her? Did you kill my mother?" She then fights him off and flees. And at that same moment, the cops show up in cop cars and a bunch of soldiers get off the plane, and it forces Eric to run. And when the group that dropped him off hears gunshots, they turn back around to pick him up. And right before he's able to get into the car, Jerome shoots him a couple times. But the group is able to pick up his body and get out of there. Hanna, however, escaped to Dieter's cauliflower export company and snuck out on a truck bound for England. Thank you for watching this recap. If you do not see the next one up in the corner right there on the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up shortly. Please consider following the channel. That'd be cool. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, there's a thumbs down button for a reason.